Hi, I am Harvinder Singh, President of Bestica, the User Experience Recruiting Staffing Company. And this is
Tegan, Torres, User Experience Recruiter.
We want to help the UX community grow in their career, so we requested some top-notch UX professionals to give some advice on not only how you can grow in your career, but also on how you can make major impact in your organization. Our first speaker today is Julie Jensen, Senior UX Manager at Microsoft, managing the cloud technologies. So let us push ourselves out of this picture so you can actually see Julie Jensen.
So I bet that you are a really experienced user researcher. You've probably run hundreds of usability tests. You've talked to an awful lot of customers. You've written reports. You've even presented to your top CEO-type management. And you're wondering, how do you have a bigger, broader, deeper impact? And let me tell you, the best way to really do that is to invest in yourself as a salesperson. Learn how to sell your ideas and your expertise. How do you do that? You focus on who your customers are and what do they need. Who are your customers? Well, obviously it's your manager, right? But you already knew that. Who is it beyond your manager who needs to know your results? Who needs to know how to improve the user experience? And how do you make it a symbiotic relationship where they need your information and you need their information? I think about it like this. If I have just a customer at a grocery store, I go in, I buy a product. The company has nothing to do with my success in that situation. But if I go to a lawyer, the lawyer's success equals my success. They have to understand what's important to me, and I have to understand how do they operate and how do they work. If we work together, we've got a good symbiotic relationship. They win the case, and I win the case. I look at my customers, management, marketing, engineering, support, all as the client, right? How do I make them successful through my success?
That was Julie Jensen. She makes an excellent point. You need to do more than just your job. You need to approach your job like a salesperson, because ultimately, when your company succeeds, so will you. However, as a user experience professional, it is important for you to track your progress and what you bring to the table. But how do you distinguish yourself from the rest of the team? How do you track your contributions? Here is Sean Van Tyne and Dr. Jolie Garderner to address just that.
If you want to grow your career within your company, one of the things that you need to do is you need to learn to profile your business leaders just like you profile your customers. So when you're designing your solution for your customers and you profile them to figure out what their goals are and what they want, and you design the solution for that, you need to do the same thing internally with your internal customers, your business leaders. You need to find out what language they're speaking, and you need to speak to them in their terms.
You need to be seen as someone who thinks strategically. You need to know why you are involved in a specific change within your organization. What's the problem that's being addressed with this change? Get some baseline data. Does this impact marketing? Does this impact the help desk? Does this impact the learning curve of users? Why, again, are you making the change? Get some numbers into what is the status quo at the moment, and then look for information, for metrics, for numbers about the impact of the change. Has this design that you've been involved with decreased the learning curve for new users by X period of time? Do they make X% fewer errors?
So for example, you could measure the number of support calls. So let's say before you did the design, you had 5,000 calls around the login screen. And then after you redesign it, you go back and you see how number of support calls are, and hopefully there's just a few hundred. And then the difference between those two times how much a usual call costs, which is like $50 to $75 per call, gives you the exact dollar amount that you have saved your company.
And that's how the strategic impact of what you're doing can be measured across the organization and ideally across industries. Also, have what I call a me file in your desk. Keep a record of these kinds of changes. If somebody says, you know, that information you gave us on the fact that most of the recommendations that people got for joining our phone service came from relatives, and we use that in an email marketing campaign, write that down. It is great information to put on your resume and see if you can get numbers to associate with it. Measure what matters and make sure that people know about it.
Tracking your impact made by your decisions and your work is an essential practice for advancing your career. Another characteristic of a successful UX professional is the ability to not only create a good design, but to really follow through with it, present it well, and support it throughout the entire life cycle. Ron George and Mary Lalomia have some great advice on this topic. Let's listen to what they have to say.
I think the best advice that I could give to UX professionals, and especially UX designers, are that designs don't sell themselves. It's one thing to come up with an amazing design, but there's a lot of shepherding, after you've created that design. There's shepherding, there's selling, there's explaining, and I would say that selling your design, advocating for it, is going to be 20 to 30% of your job. I've seen lots and lots of amazing ideas that get killed because someone doesn't explain it properly, or they don't notate it properly, or they don't push it through the right channels. I can give you a 95% guarantee that the person signing the check is not going to be a UX person, and you will have to explain it and have all the use cases thought out, all the scenarios, everything.
The other part of it is just being persuasive, by the force of being enthusiastic and passionate about who your users are and knowledgeable about who your users are, being able to persuade designers and developers in terms of what your users' expectations are around a particular product or service.
And I would say that, being a good salesman for all of your designs is probably going to be one of the best kind of attributes that you could have.
Pick up a sales book. Read a book about what it takes to be a real salesperson. Not a used car lot salesperson, but a salesperson who really understands their customers' needs and actually gets referrals. It's always an awful lot easier if you have a customer who keeps coming back for more. So make that investment. If you do, you'll notice that you're actually taking a commission on yourself because you are growing in your salary, you're growing in your impact, and you're having a deeper, broader impact on the user experience and in your own career.